So I'm celebrating 4 years of strict carnivore, not a lick, taste, or bite of anything off a carnivore diet. Hey, what's shaking bacon? My name's Bruno Panucci. I hope you're doing well. So I'm celebrating 4 years of being carnivore. Now, I don't know the exact date I became carnivore, so I waited till a week after the first week of January. So I'm in the second week of January here and of 2025. And the reason why I waited till now was I didn't want to accidentally celebrate it prematurely. I didn't make a decision. It wasn't a New Year's resolution that made me become strict carnivore. After years of trying to be strict carnivore, I actually started back in 2018. So if you want to include 2018 till 2025, that's how long I've really been doing carnivore. I just had a rough time being strict with it. I was good with it. When I was doing it, I was strict. I could do it for a few weeks, maybe a couple months or a few months, but I always gave up for one reason or another. As much as people may not want to hear this, when you're having difficulty being strict with carnivore, it's not that you fell off the wagon. It's not that you had a rough time. It's not that you had triggers and all these things. You're always going to have those things while you're trying to get strict. And probably even the rest of your life, even once you are strict with carnivore, the reality is it's self-sabotage. I know it's a tough love thing to hear, but it really is. You ultimately are responsible for what goes in your cake hole, or in our case as carnivores, our ribeye hole. And you have no one else to blame but yourself when you do that. Yes, you can argue the deck is stacked against you because of the society we live in these first world countries where all this junk food is, I wouldn't say cheaper to get, but easily more accessible to get. Because if you're eating a clean carnivore diet, it's really affordable. I probably spend, and I got a huge appetite, I might spend $12 or $15 a day on an expensive day with ground beef. That's really not much nowadays. That's like maybe 3 pounds of meat. That's really not much nowadays if you accept the fact that in Canada, food is crazy. Everything's crazy in America and Canada right now. I won't even get into it, but that's the reality we live in. I used to pay on a good sale $3 for a pound of ground beef, and now a good sale on ground beef is $4.50, right? So if I have 3 pounds a day, that's about $14 or $15. So that's the reality of the world I'm living in now. It's pretty cheap to live off $15 a day. I used to spend more than that at a fast food restaurant getting breakfast. Breakfast is traditionally one of the cheapest meals of the day. So the argument of, well, I can't afford to do carnivore, that's a weak argument. You just need to find out how much prices are for foods and meats when they're on sale, and it's really affordable. Even if you pay regular price, it's affordable, because you know what else you're saving? Money on medications, money on junk food, the medical expenses you're going to have when your health goes out, that's invaluable. And all those things kind of fall to the wayside when you're eating clean. So you have no one else to blame but yourself. And I understand it's a steep battle. I went through it myself. I struggled being strict carnivore from 2018 to 2021. I first got turned on to the idea of low and zero carb back in 2013 and 14. I started seeing a doctor in north of Toronto because I live in Ontario, and I found out that there was such thing as sugar and carbohydrate addiction. And I thought about it and I was like, well, every diet I've ever gone on, and I'd gone on lots of different diets, were always low carb diets. So it made sense to lose weight. You go on a low carb diet. The problem is they weren't sustainable, and I yo-yoed a lot through the years. But the interesting thing was, because I was young and I was, ectomorph or endomorph? I forget which one. It's been years now since I've thought about that, where I can always put on muscle and fat easily. No problem. I also have hypothyroidism. I turned to carnivore because I had a heart attack in 2015, a major heart attack. So I started trying strict carnivore shortly after that. The problem was I just had a rough time being strict to it because of that sugar and carbohydrate addiction. So when I say you're responsible for what goes in your mouth and you're self-sabotaging, that's true. And trust me, that's coming from someone who has a sugar and carbohydrate addiction. I know what it's like to give into it all the time. And it's not an easy road. The first couple weeks you deal with the physical withdrawals. You feel like crap for the first few days. You get like a headache behind your eyes. It's like cutting out caffeine. You get like this headache behind your eyes. Your energy's off for the first week. Your minerals in your body are all messed up. Your electrolytes. Going on something like a snake juice diet along with carnivore. So you're getting, I shouldn't say a snake juice diet, but making sure you're getting electrolyte drinks. I recommend snake juice. It's got a really good balance of potassium and magnesium and salt for your daily needs. And you're going to get a lot sticking to red meat. I learned a lot of what not to do when I became carnivore. I was eating too lean that first year I was seeing that doctor. He had me eating turkey and chicken for any of the meats. And it was only the volume of my palm that I was allowed to have 3 times a day. And I was actually having eggs in the morning, but that was it. Well, that probably only accounts for 800 calories, maybe 800 calories, and all the vegetables I wanted, but my digestive system was a wreck. So I was worried about becoming carnivore because my constipation was so bad. I lost a lot of weight doing that, but I was also going through protein poisoning, and I had all this energy, but I was tired all the time because I was malnourished. I was getting malnourished. I was getting thinner. So people are like, hey, you're looking great. But I didn't feel healthier. I felt healthy in the way I wasn't carrying around the 150 pounds that I was before, but my energy was way off. I actually started having sleep paralysis, and that was rather fascinating. It usually freaks people out because they can't move. They wake up and their mind is woken up, but their body hasn't. The signal to reach the body has basically been shut off, and you're in a sort of dream state because when you're sleeping, you don't move the same way you would if you're awake. If you're running in a dream, you're not running in your bed, right? You're not moving like that. Think of a dog when they're having a nightmare and they waddle their legs a little bit. We have something that happens in our bodies that shuts our bodies off from our mind while we're sleeping. And I was waking up through that, and I was only getting a few hours sleep a night from this protein poisoning. So I was going through that not knowing what it was. And the digestive issues were really bad to the point where I started getting hemorrhoids worse than ever. So I had hemorrhoids before that, but this got really bad to the point where I couldn't lie down on my back. It was really painful. So I had to stop that way of eating. So when carnivore came along, the first thing I thought was, ooh, I don't know, like now I'm not having any vegetables. That was probably the only thing that was giving me any sort of relief with the bathroom. And sure enough, I found out if you just get enough fat in your diet, your digestion works just great. So I notice if I'm starting to get a little constipated, I just have more fat in my diet. If for some reason my bowels are getting a little loose, I cut back on the fat. Your body finds its sweet spot. You just need to listen to it. But I've talked about this before. What changed? What got me to the point where I was finally able to become a strict carnivore? Well, it was through tragedy, actually, in my life. I had gone through a little window of craziness in my life with all sorts of things happening in my life, like once in a lifetime things. And, car accident, divorce. Without getting into too much of it, it was a lot all at once in a short window of time. And that wasn't the worst thing. One of the worst things that happened to me was my dog got really sick. And this was the first dog I ever had. And she was a sweetheart. Her name was Sweepy. And she was a rescue. I got her from a Humane Society, I think it was, in Stratford, Ontario. And she was such a loving dog. She knew she was rescued by me. She was incredibly attached to me. I was incredibly attached to her. It was a fast bond. And I have a dog now. His name's K9. He's a great little guy, but it's not the same bond. And this dog, after 3+ years, started getting seizures, and she quickly went downhill. And after just maybe a couple months, and that's when I was pretty strict with carnivore. I'd been strict for about 3 months before the seizures came on. And the stress of it, I just started eating off the carnivore diet again. And as she got worse, my carnivore got worse and worse. And it got to the point where I had to put her down. And I went through 4 months from September through January to the beginning of January where I just ate garbage. I ate garbage every day. I lived off pizza and ice cream and cake. I'm not exaggerating when I say I lived off pizza, ice cream, and cake. I'd wake up every morning. I would think, I'm going to be good today. I'm going to stick to carnivore. And I would even have food prep and everything, and I wouldn't stick to it. By 10:30 or 11 o'clock in the morning, I was ordering a pizza, an extra large pizza, And while I went out to get it, I would pick up either ice cream or cake. I'm talking 3 containers of Haagen-Dazs. I'm not sure if you have Haagen-Dazs in the States, but it's like Ben & Jerry's, right? So it's good quality ice cream, but I would get all this ice cream and I'd finish all 3 containers and at least half the pizza. If I had any leftovers, that was dinner later that day. And that was what I was doing for 4 months. After the first month, I realized like, oh my God, this is horrible. I've never eaten like this for this long. And I thought, what am I going to do? This is not getting better. And I thought, okay, I got to quit. I've done that for like a weekend at a time, maybe a week. I just ate like crap, but never like a whole month. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to do better next month. I didn't even slow down. It was worse. And at the end of it, I just realized, boy, I didn't even slow down. That's intense. 2 solid months of eating like that. That was also very expensive. And then I went to 3 months and I still didn't slow down. 4 months, still didn't slow down. It was at the end of the 4 months, the first week of January 2021, that I realized, oh man, that was like a solid 5 months, 4 months after my dog got put down and a month before that of just eating junk every day, all day. The only time I had real food was if I went to my parents and had a steak or roast or something there. And then I still had a ton of ice cream that I get on the way back home. So what changed? What finally changed with me? It was a mindset shift. I realized that I have no control over my addiction, no control. And I realized, like a alcoholic or someone who smokes, and they just have this moment, this epiphany where they realize, like, what the hell am I doing? And they just quit what they're doing. And at that point, there was no temptation after that. I surrendered to my addiction. I accepted the fact I can't manage carbohydrates. I'm an abstainer, not a moderator. I can't have a little bite of it here or a little bite of it there once a day, once a week, once with every meal, whatever. I tried every single way imaginable and tried it over and over and over and over again for years. I just can't moderate carbohydrates. I learned to accept that. It's easy to abstain. After the first couple weeks, when the physical withdrawals go away, you just have the mental disorder now. And that mental disorder is just the habits of, say you always treated yourself to junk food on a long weekend. Well, now it's a long weekend and you're sitting around, you're not eating junk food. And you're like, oh, I really crave junk food for some reason. And it's little things like that. Maybe it was a ritual after you finished work, you'd stop and get something. Or when you're at this one particular grocery store, or this convenience store, whatever it was, you'd get yourself a little something. It's getting rid of all those habits. But the weird thing was, that was something I was always trying to manage before and keep myself out of those tempting situations. And after this sort of epiphany, wasn't an issue. I just had no temptation for that food because I realized how slippery of a slope it was for me. And I tried reintroducing carbs once before after I was strict 0 carb for a year with that doctor. And it took about 3 weeks before I just slid right off the wagon. I just slid down the hill. It was like a really slippery slope, and I just fell. And I was right back on carbs, and I couldn't control my cravings, and I couldn't control my portion sizes. So that was a bad combination because I have a really big appetite. As you can tell, I'm a big guy. So the difficulty lies at that point of accepting where you are and not fooling yourself. Accepting the fact that maybe you're an abstainer and maybe you just can't manage this food. And that's why you might be having a difficult time being a strict carnivore. Some people can just not go through that, and they just are strong-willed enough to just not have anything off a carnivore diet when they make that decision. And that's good. It's not that they don't have that craving. It's just they got to that moment of maybe a low or whatever it was that made them realize like something's got to change. And they happen to find it at the right time. I found carnivore long before, but I didn't own it for a few years. So I just want you to keep in mind, don't give up. Some people can learn to manage that addiction, and some people have to have that moment where they just realize, I'm not in control of this. And at that point, once you accept it, and you truly accept it, it just doesn't call to you anymore. It doesn't call to me. Junk food, carbs don't call to me anymore. Something I'd like to reintroduce one day into my diet would be a salad. I got nothing against salad, but I know it's just, that's a bad step for me, because that step leads to the next thing I open up, and then the next thing open up, and the next thing open up. And after a while, you start to get a little confident thinking I can manage all this. And that's what happened to me the first time around when I slipped off a zero carb diet. Eventually you get to the point where you realize you just can't manage that stuff. You don't say to an alcoholic, well, you always had a problem with whiskey, so why don't you just have some beer? You'll be okay with beer. Or someone who used to smoke, be like, well, why don't you just have some fake cigarettes? Why don't you just vape? You can't do that to someone who has an addiction. It's an all or nothing way of thinking for that person. I never struggled with those things, but I respect the fact that those people can't manage it. And they realize after a while, when they've gone for counseling or they just decided to quit on their own, they can't manage it. They have to abstain from it. People are just built differently. And though those things never called to me, drugs, alcohol, smoking, sugar never called to those people. So anyway, something for you to keep in mind. It was a bittersweet moment that led to me being strict carnivore. I miss that dog. I think about her every day. It's been 4.5 years and I still miss that dog like crazy. She was by far the best decision I ever made in my life. If I never would have gotten that dog and rescued her, she wouldn't have become such a deep part of my life that when I put her down, it wouldn't have affected me the way it did. That made me binge so bad. That made me realize I have no control over this addiction. And so it's really important to find your why. For me, I found my why the rough way. This channel is there for you so that you don't have to go through what I went through, so that you can find a way of motivating yourself to be strict carnivore, because it can be tough for people, so that they can be strict and not have to deal with these addictive tendencies. And you can have all this freedom. And what do you mean freedom? Well, food freedom. Food doesn't control my every thought anymore. I'm not thinking about the next little bite of food I'm going to get and when I'm going to get it. I don't have that complication at all in my life. I'm free to eat what I want as long as it's within a carnivore diet. I don't have something that's controlling my will and my actions and my thoughts all day, every day. It's really nice. So anyway, thanks a lot. Take care. And please tune in to another video. Like and subscribe if you can. Thanks. Bye-bye.